Hey, what's going on, guys? Phil here, and it is podcast 198. Today's guest is Anthony Scroggins, or as you guys know him a lot out there, Shimmering Sword. He's the lead mech designer at Catalyst Game Labs. How you doing, man?
Doing really good. Having a good day. Eating well. Just got some, BattleTech art done. What I'm always doing.
Yeah, mech porn, you know.
Oh yeah.
I think it's funny because I've known you before I even knew your first name or even your last name or even what you look like, which funny enough, that is a funny story the first time we met. And I've always known you as Shimmering Sword, and I followed your artwork. I mean, there was pretty much two artists at the time, in my opinion, back in the day, and that was Flying Debris and your work. And you were the predominant, I would say, commission artist out there as well, especially once PGI nabbed up Flying Debris. And funny enough, how I met you in real life was it was MechCon, right? Isn't that?
Yeah. First time.
And we met at the hotel, and there was a few of us, and we're all hanging out, and we're walking down the street, and you're like standing right next to me, and we've been talking, and I'm like, yeah, dude, what, you know, like, who are you again? And you're like, dude, Shimmy. And I'm like, oh my god, I'm such an ass. And you're like, dude. I was like, oh my god.
It might be the first time that happened, but not the last time for sure.
Oh my god. Because like I know the voice. As soon as like you said it, I was like, I don't even know. I don't know. It's a one-way street usually with streaming and stuff like that. But
I'm trying to think who else I've gotten that way. Like definitely Brent Evans. So my own art director, Brent Evans, got him with that. He didn't recognize my face. That was also at MechCon, once we got into the event. And plenty of people at Gen Con a few years ago.
Yeah.
So don't feel bad about it.
I don't. It's one thing I've learned, like being a streamer too, in those type of events. I don't know how many people came up to me and said, "Who am I?" And I'm like, how would I know? I've never heard your voice, or like if I've only heard your voice, unless you like you have such a distinct voice, and I've played with you so many times, maybe. But I was like, and yeah, I never even tried to attempt that. But anyways, man, thanks for being on the podcast. For those that are wondering, subjects. We're going to talk pretty general about BattleTech artwork, of course, because I've got an artist here. Also, his involvement with the Kickstarter, and ongoing involvement with the Kickstarter. And for those that don't know, that is the Catalyst Game Labs Kickstarter for the Clan Invasion box set, which, by the way, you can still back. And a lot of people don't realize that. If you just Google Clan BattleTech Kickstarter, Catalyst Game Labs Kickstarter, yeah, all that fun stuff. You can actually go to the Kickstarter, and it says for late backers, so there's options there for you as well. I don't know if it's the full options, but I know there's quite a bit of slots left, and so you can get in on it as well.
Yeah, so I think some good information there is, for those in the know, it's a 2-wave Kickstarter, so wave 1, wave 2. Still haven't shipped wave 1 yet. Of course, we got many things going on that cause delays. But if you're a late backer at this point, unfortunately, you won't be on wave 1. You can get in on wave 2, though. So there's pros and cons there. Just wanted to make sure that's pretty clear, because a lot of people have been confused. They go on as a late backer and then realize they can't pick what stuff they're going to buy until wave 2 comes around.
Yeah, that's some good information. So before, I mean, obviously we could talk. I think we should definitely, and we are going to talk about that. Let's take a step back, because like me and you have talked, I don't know how many hours about this subject, and it'd be interesting, again, for being, I guess, like on the record, but also just being out there in the internet. Your involvement. How did you get involved with BattleTech? Like, what's your origin story?
Well, geez, pretty much my whole artistic origin story is BattleTech, but way back early high school years, maybe even middle school years, started to get into, notice those Mechwarrior games. What are those? So Mechwarrior 4 and Mech Commander is really where I jumped in, then worked my way backwards from there. But fast forward a bit, and I'm drawing, pretty much that's all I'm drawing is BattleTech stuff. And put my feelers out for, I don't know if it was FASA or Catalyst or who it was at the time, but I reached out to Randall and he seemed a bit busy. But years later, I'd have to remember, it's got to be like eight years ago now or something. Catalyst got in contact with me because, like you said, I was at the time one of those like lead fan art guys. And they reached out and started doing some work for Catalyst. So yeah, that's where the BattleTech career starts, but kind of my personal artistic interest in it
So,
goes a long way back.
and how old were you when that started?
The working at Catalyst?
No, 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 no. Just you getting into like playing BattleTech Mechwarrior.
I would have played. Ooh, maybe a really long time ago. I would have played a MechWarrior 2 demo, but I would have bought MechWarrior 4 pretty close to when it came out. Was that very early 2000s?
How old are you?
I'm 31 now.
Okay.
So
Okay. So yeah, you'd.
I'm terrible at keeping track of
No,
dates.
no, no, no. I was just gonna say. I mean, Mech 4 came out around basically what 2000, I think it was around there or something, and Mech Commander did as well, or 2001 maybe, something like that. So yeah, you're 5 years younger than me. So yeah, you would have been. Yeah, I mean that makes sense. I mean, yeah, you would have been 13, 12, 13, I guess, maybe
Yeah,
somewhere.
that would make sense, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
Like maybe a little later than that, but yeah.
So you were drawing fan art at that age. Were you already were you already getting into art and other like stuff, or?
I think that's the first thing that really spurred me to draw more.
Wow, that's cool, man.
Before that, it was video games and Lego.
Yeah.
Lego was my jam.
Dude,
but,
me and you, like, we're so similar. Oh my God, that's weird. I mean, except art because I sucked at it. But like, yeah, Legos. Did you build a bunch of mechs? I know I
oh
did.
yeah,
Oh yeah.
leveraged as much of my Lego as I could to make mechs when I got into MechWarrior. So no, it really was MechWarrior that got me to be an artist.
Yeah.
Before then, doodles were just any kid doing doodles.
Yeah. Yeah. Funny enough.
That's when I started thinking, this. I didn't know it could be a career yet, but that's when it started.
Yeah, I was gonna say, funny enough. So you have this introduction to a universe, and then that universe turns around and presents in later in life a career. Like so that's. Yeah, very very similar stories here. That's pretty cool, and I didn't know that. So, all right. So you progressed through that. Do you have any formal education? Did you go to school for it?
I did go to the Art Institute for almost 2 years for animation. Learned some illustration and 3D skills there, but for the most part, I figured out, okay, I don't like drawing things over and over. And I don't like the animation stage of 3D either. So I was like, this school's really expensive. It's not that great. The Art Institute I went to is now closed down. So good thing.
Good call.
So I dropped out of that and just self-taught myself from there. So other than the 3D software skills, I'd like really it's self-taught. And that's kind of what I tell people is really don't need school to be an artist these days.
Yeah.
Unless it's some really technical stuff like 3D modeling can be pretty helpful to get some training.
Yeah. Well, and funny enough, I was me and you were talking recently, and you were actually working on 3D models when we were talking, and you shared your screen, and I was like, oh no shit, I didn't even know you were proficient at doing 3D modeling too, and lo and behold, yes you are, and I'm like, all right, well, just that makes sense. How does that translate over, by the way, being an artist in the 2D world? Do you think?
I think it does. It sounds a bit traditionalist at sometimes, but that whole saying of like learn your fundamentals and it'll help with other things. As far as in 3D, a big deficiency you see is someone learns 3D modeling and that's great, but now they want to model something, and sometimes a little boring to model somebody else's design, so you want to do your own. And that's where you need to be a good designer. And a lot of people fall into the pitfall of designing in 3D, which in some cases works, but usually you want to take in some sort of pre-sketch at minimum. So being a good 2D artist is going to help you make better 3D models. At least that's my belief.
Yeah, I mean, definitely a reference piece of artwork as well. Okay,
Hmm.
yeah, that makes sense. So you go to school, it's not really obviously working. You don't like the illustrator. It's funny because you mentioned illustration, like animation. Were they doing like where you had to like hand draw the same character like over in different poses? Because like nowadays
So
there's new tech, right? Like
right,
it's all
eventually you would
3D.
get into that. They teach you a bit of 3D, a bit of 2D. They're already pushing you towards 3D, which I think is a smart decision. But eventually you would specialize at your own choice and take elective classes for that. So I could have learned hand drawn 2D. I could have learned like Flash style 2D or 3D. And I definitely saw the technical value of the 3D classes, so I focused on those while I was there. And
Yeah.
then just more illustrative 2D classes like painting and Photoshop, stuff like that.
Yeah, because I mean, I see a few like, especially animes. There's one that's on Netflix that like the mechs that they use are definitely 3D in the scenes, but then everything else is 2D. But I know that a lot they're using programs nowadays. I know Toon
Mhm.
Boom is one. I don't know what the big studios use, but you know, I don't think they're doing the same hand drawn, uh, like the
Right.
old school stuff. I think all that's gone the wayside. I think.
Yeah, it's definitely much more economical to have 3D emulate your 2D for you at this point. Personally, you can tell the difference. I really love when a studio pulls off 2D stuff, but it makes sense. You know, everybody loves Love, Death, and Robots. That the Rancher one is awesome.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a good example me and you've talked about is like if you look at the original Mech Commander, right?
Hmm.
That still holds well, I think. I mean, considering it's 20 years old, and
Yep.
the it wasn't even pixel art at the time. That's not like it was just old. It was an old game, but yet aesthetically, it blew the Mech Commander 2 out of the water. Mech Commander 2 was
Hmm.
the first like intro into 3D, and it looked, oh my god. You know what's funny about Mech Commander 2? When people are like, oh, it wasn't that bad, I'm like, go look at Halo. Halo and Mech Commander 2 came out the exact same year, but yet
Yeah.
that's the difference, and yeah. So um
Yeah, it's really interesting. I believe the Mech Commander sprites were they pre 3D rendered them
yes.
because real time would be too hard, but
Yeah.
it's a really smart process. And yeah, it just holds up so
Yeah.
well even today.
Yeah, I because of our current project with MechWarrior 5 and modding Mech Commander, and I talked about that a little bit on the podcast with Alex Garden. But we had initially tried to recreate Mech Commander because you can actually pull a lot of the information out of Mech Commander as far as the pack files. A lot of people have made tools over the years. It's just, and what they did is they basically created a scene, I guess back then. I don't know what programs, but they created it so the 3D model, and then they rotated it with 32 directions, right? And they would take a snapshot basically every. But then you got to think that's if the mech is standing still, that means the legs 30. Actually, I think it's like 16 because you could technically flip the legs. You can inverse, right? Because the
Mhm.
legs are the
Yeah.
same. But like the torsos and arms, if you have any asymmetry, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, and then, well, every single animation you have. So if walking is 16, frames, well, 16 times, I mean, it's astronomical the amount of,
Yep. Yep.
it's insane. So like when we were going down that rabbit hole, anyways, but yeah, I love the aesthetic. So out of the older games, did you have a favorite? Did you latch on? Because for me, it was Mech Commander, I think.
Yeah, I played Mech Commander quite a bit. Then definitely Mech Warrior 4 Mercenaries. That campaign got a lot of playthroughs. Um, yeah, stuck with me quite a while until after Mech 4 Mercs, it all went away.
Yeah,
Then I was kind of a Halo guy for a long time.
yeah. I was gonna say, did you play online with Mech 4 at all?
Yep. On the old DSL connections.
Oh, you had DSL. Oh,
From well, that's the thing is at least those older games with less data to transmit, like lag wasn't too bad playing
yeah,
in New Zealand.
yeah.
Um, whereas other games got pretty bad. But yeah,
Yeah.
definitely played Mech 4 Mercs Vengeance online quite a bit.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, did you play 3 at all?
I didn't play 3 online, but I played 3 through the campaign.
Okay. Yeah.
I never got around to playing the expansions for 2 or 3.
Gotcha. Yeah. The reason I was asking is because the latency issues in 3, we used to call it like lag dancing, because it would be like 2 steps forward, 1 back, 2 back, 1 step. I mean, just all that. And then it was at that weird point where I was still like on dial up. And it was at that weird point where DSL was starting to get into people's homes. And so you'd be like missing this guy, and you'd be like, where the hell is his hitbox? And then you realize, oh, I only have to point and click and it's hitting him. And those guys were at a severe disadvantage. But yeah, I didn't notice any issues. I think in Mech 4 it wasn't as, and we had the MSN
I
zone and all that.
definitely took advantage in Mech 4 if I knew I was lagging. Playing a capture the flag game, I would just jump in a light mech and they couldn't stop me from stealing their flag.
Yeah,
But
like the Osiris and all that. Yeah, I remember.
yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. I mean, so yeah, I mean, like I said, very familiar. I mean, let's talk about artwork. And
hmm
as you've progressed, and one of the things we've talked about too a lot of the times is the line artwork that was everything was based off of. And it's funny because that's what inspired you, right? Was the old
hmm
line artwork and the games that you were playing. And obviously scenes from like Mech Commander and Mech 4, and Mech 4 was different aesthetically than some of the line art work. From an artist like point of view, I mean, what's that been like as far as seeing the progression and being obviously a part of like a huge resurgence and update on BattleTech?
hmm Yeah, definitely. I think it imparts something jumping in around that. Like even Mech Commander had, for the most part, pretty good redesigns as well. So seeing that era of video games where they knew that they needed to depart from the old line art a bit, to get a good product out there.
Yeah.
And at that age I wasn't bothered by the line art, and I think it really helps you understand where people are coming from that have been into the game for a long time. You can respect that they like the old art, but as I kind of got out of art school and getting into more serious art, I was like, yeah, it's fun to take these older designs and give them a new coat of paint. It kind of made that a big part of my commission artwork model. Is you still get the occasional BattleTech fan that wanted me to stay as faithful as I could to the line art, but for the most part, it was hey, take my favorite mech and make it look cool, and
Yeah.
even you and Darren jumped in on that, and that was
Yeah, we did.
fun working with you guys. And
Yeah.
it's pretty cool now seeing all those mechs with very little editing are now official BattleTech designs.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
I mean, but think about this. Like one thing that we have talked about, which is the line art was done. And again, I don't know the names, and if they ever hear, this isn't a bash on you or whatever, but the interesting thing is what's happened because of the line art. It's like we fixated on these designs from an aesthetic point of view, and that it has to still hold true, right? And it's sort of like, well, the Atlas has to look like an Atlas, right? And it's like, well, what does that even mean too? Is because like there wasn't as many descriptors in the novels and stuff, but it was like these artists had just free reign to pretty much just create whatever. Like that's what it seems like, is like the artwork was just sort of, I want to say random, but it was like, I guess whatever they were feeling like, because man, some of the originals are so bad, like so bad.
I think it's every era of BattleTech has its own form of trailblazing. So back then, like outside of Japanese anime, there really wasn't mecha. Like there's not much to reference, especially after the initial designs that were reused from anime. It's very much like they had to make their own stuff, and they'd already figured out, okay, BattleTech should have its own look, and there's nothing to go by. So in a way, like I think my job's not as hard, because like I have some
You have
reference
reference.
point
Yeah.
to go
Yeah.
from. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, whereas my focus is like improving on that reference point. But like I'll be honest, sometimes when I'm asked to design a completely fresh mech, like that can be a struggle. And there wasn't the market either. Like today, I pay the bills entirely drawing mechs. Like it's an awesome job to have. But back then, you didn't have Western mecha specialist artists, so these guys had to go from drawing spaceships and guys in spacesuits and your typical
Yeah.
sci-fi to like, okay, how do I make cool mechs? So
Yeah.
yes, it's a lot of it is pretty bad, but I
Yeah.
think it's understandable where those guys were coming from.
Yeah, and I guess we can give them on that. And plus two is like, what does it mean establishing the artistic, or in this case, artistic feel and artistic look of a
Mhm.
universe that has been established? I mean, you'd have like what the a lot of the novel covers in a lot of the books, but even some of those were updated. So like some of the books that I thought that was the original covers, oh no, they were the redesigned ones. So obviously, with you were doing commissions for BattleTech, but you were also establishing your own sort of aesthetic with the mechs. But you also did your own project as well, and like what for me, what that was as well was seeing what it means to create a world, or in this case, a universe of like BattleTech. And me and you've talked about that as like, has any game really encapsulated the aesthetic and what it means to either be in a mech, or the realities of the implications of like a mech design on what looks cool, but what about function over form and stuff like that. And the one thing about your artwork that I appreciated was, especially when you did it's Protectorate Wars, correct?
Yeah,
That was right? Yeah, and was creating this universe because like it was like, hey, oh, okay, it's not just there's so many details that you had to go into, and I remember reading all the emails and all the updates and stuff like that, and it made me appreciate, I guess, the fact of like what BattleTech is trying to do in this reinvigoration of like bringing new blood in and getting rid of, or not, I shouldn't say getting rid of, but like updating. Because like if you were to try to bring people in nowadays with that type of like line art and stuff, people would be like, really? Like,
yep.
like kids would be like, dude, dad, come on, no.
Yeah, it's definitely, like you said, it's fun exercise when I was building up my own setting, and uh, even that's something that I couldn't do myself. Like I hired a writer to help me write the setting because I'm good at doing the soldiers and the mechs and all the tech and how it should look, but there's so much depth to putting a setting together. I'm sure you saw like take plenty of my BattleTech influence into my own setting. It's all human, no aliens, mechs going around fighting each other. Though they're definitely not the hero of the story in my setting, but and more of like, okay, it's mine. I can do whatever I want with it. Let's just cram more genre types of mechs in there, the more styles of mechs, and so it's fun. But yeah, you quickly have people asking about the consistencies and what does this mean? What does that mean? Uh, and it's fun, but it's tough. And I could tell if the further you go into a setting, when you get into the kind of depth that BattleTech has, it's insane to
Yeah,
kind of keep track of everything.
yeah. And I mean, so when it comes to like BattleTech, did how did you establish your aesthetic? Like, was that just a natural? I mean, because when I see the mechs coming out from the Kickstarter, I recognize it's right there. I know it's like, oh
Yeah,
yep, like that's Shimmy. So how did that
yeah, I
come about?
think it's definitely been a long process. Like definitely going in a pretty like consistent direction the whole time, but man, that goes way back to probably when I did the Marauder redesign, which is I think that's like 8 years ago at this point. Um, and just trying to it's a big mishmash of like, all right, let's try to identify from the original designs like what was good about it, what is, when people look at it, what do they think is the critical part of it that makes it recognizable? What parts don't they care about? And then trying to mix in essentially, that kind of video game look, more angles, a little more industrial design, and then even just like rolling in, okay, what's other sci-fi settings doing these days? What are the trends? What are the new kids like? And I don't know, just trying to make it feel a little more cool and, like you say, modern day, as opposed to just trying to shove the old artwork in somebody's face and say, this is how it is, because people aren't just going to accept that anymore. Um, I don't know. It's always hard to describe how something came to be, but definitely know where we're at now, and trying to really really settle BattleTech into a new aesthetic that new people love and that the old fans can still enjoy as well. Because definitely a huge goal is like, let's try to not alienate our fan base when we do this.
Yeah. So let me ask you, and again, I don't know if you can like answer it, but why didn't you go with more of just like what PGI was already doing? Like, why not
Yeah,
have a
for sure. I
consistent,
mean,
thing across the board? What was that just a legal thing? Was that I mean, what was the decision
I
making
think
behind
it's
that?
multifaceted, because for sure Catalyst and PGI has talked. Like, I don't have all the info there, but they've talked. Uh, getting along would be in everyone's favor design wise, because time saved. Like, just the way that Hairbrain was able to put out their BattleTech game with the PGI models, like, definitely cut way down on dev time and is immediately recognizable. All the
Consistency,
MWO
yeah.
players can just jump right over and say, "Hey, like, those are the mechs I like. Let me go hunt down those mechs," and it's not jarring them again. Because definitely every MechWarrior player that now comes over to BattleTech tabletop, before the last few years, it's very jarring when they're, "Whoa,
Yeah.
this is what the mechs look like." Um, but it's part legal, it's financial. Like, when you start sharing designs, you get question of, like, okay, so who do we profit share? Who gets
Yeah.
what? And even before Piranha and Hairbrained was in the picture, there's so many hands in the pot. So, um, you kind of get to a point where if everybody needs to get paid, nobody gets paid, because
Yeah.
there needs to be a reasonable price point on our products. And then, yeah, it's, lawyers are expensive. Just even if everyone's in agreement, a lawyer still has to sign it off for you, and that alone is expensive. Like, it's honestly, part of it is just cheaper to
Yeah.
redesign the mech again than to
Yeah.
have, you know, Tops, Catalyst, Piranha Games, Microsoft, like, and all of their lawyers sign off on something. So it's kind of more, everybody likes, wants to get along, but it's just very complicated. It's
Yeah.
a big old mess.
Yeah. Speaking of games, do you remember MechWarrior Tactics? You remember
Yep.
the
Oh yeah.
Can you comment? Do you want to
Terrible.
comment on that?
Atrocious from day one. I don't know what they were thinking.
Oh,
I think there'll always be accusations thrown around of, does a particular developer or development house really care about BattleTech? And I won't place a certain judgment on the heads of MechWarrior Tactics, but there's definitely a problem where their artists were not BattleTech people. You could really tell that the I guess the word would be desecrated. They just didn't know what parts of a mech needed to be respected.
yeah.
And also at the same time, like, they knew how to design mechs kind of, but you could tell they weren't like career mech designers, which again is a very new thing. When I was in high school, that was a joke. Like,
Yeah.
hey, what if I get to design robots for a living? And we would all just laugh, like, no, that's not possible. But now it really is possible. Guys like me and Alex and Marco, like, we design robots for a living, and it's really cool.
Yeah. I think, and I don't know this for sure. This is totally speculation, but I have a feeling that's why when HPS came into the picture, one, we ended up with it, and plus it made sense probably from a business, but I think it was because PGI had to sign off on a sub license for that HPS tactics, right? And then obviously it flopped, right? But I think it was also IGP at the time, so it was a weird time, right?
Oh,
but
yeah.
like the art consistency, I can definitely understand and appreciate. And even that all being said, like we did see different art designs. I mean, you mentioned it yourself. Mech Commander was different than Mech 4, but it wasn't like this such a huge leap, right? Like you could still say, oh yeah, there's the Timberwolf, right? Like you knew, right? It wasn't that big of a drastic, but the same thing is now happening with your artwork that's coming and is now official out there, which is it's not, you can see inspiration, but anytime I see a piece of artwork, especially with the Kickstarter updates that I've been trying to tweet out and get more attention to, because I think they're fantastic.
Thank you.
Is your aesthetic that you've set. And I don't know another way of just sort of saying it, but it's this: when I see your designs, I'm like, yep, that's, and I don't know what that is. Let me ask you, I'm going to ask you a very specific question, and this may be a little bit, why did you go with the double knee joint on the Timberwolf?
The joint off to the side thing.
Yeah, because MWO went away with it, and then
yeah, I think it's kind of a thing where stuff like that, like sometimes we'll push things out towards something different. But for sure, whenever a mech does have a unique element like that, even if it's not on the original, like if say Mechwarrior at some point did it, I'm always looking out for items that are not the norm. So yeah, a side knee thing is always a good detail to look out for. At one point, at a management level, it was even said like, "Hey, let's try and make more of the clan mechs like that as a way to differentiate them from the inner sphere." And I like, a good idea, but let's not change things just to change things.
Gotcha.
But definitely, like, I think both ways of setting up the Timberwolf knees look fine. I think it just looks a hair more interesting with the side knee joint.
Looks more aggressive. I like your design. Like, I'm not a big fan of MWOs, Timby, and the Timberwolf is my baby, so I've got to be so damn picky with it. But it's like it's very blocky in MWO, and it's very, how do I say this? It's fat. It's a chunker, right? Yep. I mean, and I mean that, like, if you look at like to me the Timberwolf and a lot of mechs like the Timberwolf, they always had this predatory sort of look to them, right? That can pounce, right? This,
right?
And in MWO and even Mech 5 with designs, like you lose that. And to me, one of the things that always made the Timberwolf was that sort of sleek, agile. Okay, yeah, and from the Mech 3 intro, right? All those things. It's just. And so I appreciate it. That's why I was asking you that. I think it's a good call that you went to it as well. And I think we've talked about like animations and stuff like that as well. And like what is it?
I think the Mechwarrior Online Timberwolf is also a bit of a victim of maybe that particular period in design and the models. Like you could tell later on with the clan mechs, they got a lot more comfortable, probably with their optimizing of the game. Like, okay, we can push poly counts. We can do curved stuff more. We can do more sleek. I think that Timberwolf, being one of those, first wave of clan mechs, just got a little too many blocky bits, and then you can always tell a lot of times, Alex will do a great design, and then just in the translation to model it, something changes or it gets chunkier, be it for gameplay or animation. I think there's certain mechs you got to look out for to nail right, and they just missed it on the Timberwolf.
Yeah.
I think they similarly missed slightly with the Direwolf. Those are two just big guys you got to get right. And it's really easy in a production pipeline for just to miss something, and it's locked in. You're stuck with it.
Yeah. Well, you're a player too. Like you were in Aces with me, and you played competitively as well. And a lot of people may not know that. So not only are you an artist, you probably that's probably got to be a weird like. Are you over the top? Like, do you critique stuff quite a bit? Like, is that something you have to turn off, or you can't turn off? Like,
I can definitely sit back and just enjoy media. I think particularly these days with film, you have to.
yeah,
Um, Video games. I mean, honestly, after MechWarrior Online, I haven't gamed as much, but I was definitely able to settle. Like, I really enjoyed my time with MechWarrior Online. Like, had its flaws, but it delivered something that MechWarrior hadn't done before, which is a more robust online experience. But a lot of games have come from transitioning that era of lobbies to now matchmaking and
yeah,
how to make a good matchmaking experience. So, like, yeah, I enjoyed it. There's definitely mechs like the Timberwolf and a few others where, like, ooh, I feel they could have done a little better. But on the whole, like, I really like the work Alex did on those designs, and I think most of the time they got translated pretty good to 3D.
yeah. I mean, and what about designs too? This is something I was just talking about on stream, which is like the Vapor Eagle Goshawk. But you read about them all the time in the novels, and we've never seen them in game. And so for
Right.
me, that like I had no previous like this is what it's got to look like. So for me at least, it was well, I'd seen the artwork, but the line art I should say, but for me it was definitely one of those like, oh okay, yeah, that works, and I thought to me it looked like something you'd see almost in Pacific Rim. If you, it almost,
Right.
to be honest, like some of the newer clan ones too, almost felt alien comparatively, and that's
Hmm.
not a bad thing. I felt like that's actually something that I wish HBS and PGI would have done, which is there should have been flavors. Like if the mechs were from the Draconis combine, you would they would be you know what I'm saying? Like there would be a
Hmm.
flair that would be different. I just sort of feel like, and we didn't quite get that as well, but the Vapor Eagle, it does. It feels alien. The Arctic Cheetah and a lot of the original clan art were already updated, right? I mean, comparatively, line art was already updated compared to the IS ones as well. So
Yeah, that's always an interesting thing is that today playing BattleTech, even video games, we're using designs that are 35 years old and we're using designs that are 5 years old, and it's all mixed together. And some have been redesigned, some have not. Just all these different sources. Yeah, like you talk about the Vapor Eagle, it definitely looks different, but then like part of it is we're just used to picking and choosing or used to what's been presented us. Like, honestly, Mech 2 through Mech 4, they kind of just kept reusing the same mechs
yeah,
over and over again,
yeah,
which is again great for development, but it's kind of MechWarrior Online first game to, outside of mods, like deliver so many mechs,
yeah.
and you start getting into these areas that people have never seen before. So it's interesting. I thought the Phoenix Hawk was an interesting one because to me it just looks like Master Chief with that head.
Yeah, yeah, I can see that. Yeah,
Which
yeah.
it's a cool looking mech. In fact, I think the MechWarrior Online Phoenix Hawk is probably better than my one for tabletop. But yeah, just interesting stuff like that.
So you mentioned maybe not the elephant in the room, but obviously I know we can't get in details about Harmony Gold and all that, but at least what we can say is the unseen are no longer unseen. So,
Yeah,
let's talk
at
about the
least
Marauder and those.
yeah, it's an interesting point where again, like I can't really speak on all the legalities. I don't know what happened inside those doors, but for sure the heat is off, which has been great because like our this last round was very clearly
Yeah,
just straight IP trolling, not even fighting over their original designs anymore because we're moved past that. Now it's just very vindictive from them. So it's good to see the outcomes that happen there. Um, but yeah, it's just the fact that we can now, it's more like not sweating about merely using the names of certain mechs and just going in. We're still redesigning them because we can do better.
Yeah.
than 35 plus years ago.
Was there any pressure on that as far as like thinking, well, what is the archer? What is the marauder, rifleman? Like did did that take a little bit longer because of, the iconic nature of them?
Oh, I think, Marauder, Warhammer, Archer, Rifleman, I'd already tackled them outside of the official realm. And personally, I was a lot more willing to, stray out. It was definitely a goal, even though it's fan art. It's like, okay, let's try and make something that is legally in the clear. And it turns out Catalyst agreed that they were in the clear. Obviously, Harmony Gold didn't, but some change more than others. Like, I think my Archer is a pretty big departure. Maybe less so on mechs like the Rifleman or the Warhammer. Then, of course, I guess my original Marauder didn't go official. That's now I redesigned that. I think we pushed it a little on that one, but yeah, it's interesting. I don't think things take longer because of legal concerns. It's more that we wanted to do a really good job on those
Yeah.
mechs, so we spent extra time going back and forth on nitpicks and refinements there. So yeah, those early days when we were, years before the Game of Armored Combat box came out, uh, definitely some mechs would take just weeks to get through design deliberations.
Yeah. I was gonna say, so uh Shimmy here did a piece way back in the day when he's talking about the Moonscape piece. I have it right over here because we got our posters, and we sent you one, correct? I think, right? Did we send you one?
No, I don't know. I still
Okay.
don't have one of my own. I've definitely printed and sold
So
many.
you have them up on, yeah, someone could get, but the Moonscape is it's absolutely is amazing. Like it has the dropship in the background, it has the 4 mechs that we're talking on a Thunderbolt coming off the dropship, and it just
Mhm.
like I as soon as I got them, I got metal frames and glass, and I sent one to Darren, that was a ordeal. Like I had to go to a custom like shipping agency and stuff like that. And anyways, it was I didn't realize that would have been. Anyways, but man, that was a long time ago too. That was, I think,
Oh yeah.
that had to have been like seven,
Yeah, something like that.
almost 8 years. Yeah, it was a while. So, um, oh man, I'm just looking at that image. Definitely cool. And speaking of, I mean, cool too is like, obviously we've got the MWO, we got Mech 5 now, HBS, I'm bummed, man. I'm not going to lie. Because like, I think, I think what the mod scene has done and what they did with the DLC packs and stuff like this, and I don't know if you've played the game much, but like just the sense of the BattleTech universe, that game did a really good job. And right now with the mod scene too, is just like where, okay, and I felt like with them moving on, we're gonna sort of miss out on potentially, a future product that could have just even brought that even closer to home.
Yeah, it's definitely. I gave the campaign a playthrough. Did some free play, especially once all the DLC came in, so I could see the new mechs and play all the flashpoints and stuff like that. It's definitely. I mean, it makes me wish we the next game we get is a Mech Commander. Like I would
We're working
love
on it.
that.
You know,
Love that look in real time.
right? So, yeah, we're working on that. We've got a small team, and I actually was just talking to Alex Garden from PGI on the podcast about that, which was because at the very end he was like, "So how's that going?" I'm like, we've got two, because like there's two different, I think, ways we can go about it, which is the true like RTS, what you're used to, right? Point click. Then you got AI controlling everything. And then the second direction, and we have to play test this, is you take control of a mech, but it's in that top-down isometric view. And then you issue Mech Commander like orders, or you can flip between mechs and stuff like that too. And
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like, man, just running around as like a mech, and just, I love the MechWarrior 2 lasers. I want them to come back. Me personally, I think aesthetically they look amazing, and from a gameplay, it's really cool. I just, anyways, it's just one of those things where we're, again, I'm surprised PGI has, because like Alex was like, yeah, I know it'd be really good. I know it'd be, a lot of people are interested. And I'm like, well, if you know it, why aren't you making it? But whatever. I mean, we'll make it. I mean, that's cool.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I don't know. That's, we're trying. We're working hard. I'll give you
I
an
think
update when I got one.
BattleTech's definitely having its renaissance right now, but at the same time, we're patient people. That time between MechWarrior 4 and MechWarrior Online is like, other than the Mech Assault games and the MechWarrior Dark Age tabletop, like that was a
Yeah.
long dark time for BattleTech.
Yeah.
So I think
Well,
people need to keep that perspective in mind. Is like, yeah, we got all this great stuff now. Like, maybe waiting a little longer for the next release isn't as bad as what some franchises become, as being
yeah.
milked out by their publishers.
But like also we had the card game, we had the Clicks game. Did you ever play the Clicks?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. And it got, from what I understood, it had a pretty competitive environment, and then it just sort of just disappeared. And um I mean, obviously I think this is a great segue right into the tabletop. I mean, you're involved with Catalyst, you work for them. Obviously the Kickstarter is going on. Um let's talk tabletop, because like I love BattleTech, but I don't have many friends that play it around me, right? And so like
Hmm.
there's like, I feel like that's one of the hurdles, like getting more people involved with it. And one of the things that came out back in, geez, what was it, 2012, when we had the launch party in San Francisco where we did NGNG Con, where we had the tabletop, people showed up and we had Alpha Strike rules. And I felt
Hmm.
like Alpha Strike was a good, like the idea that like, hey, you can do individual like battles, smaller stuff, but then you can also do big scale, and it's not going to take literally days, right? Like that's,
Yep.
a lot of people don't, well, one, you just don't have the time, let alone, does someone have the patience and, this or that? And do you have a table big enough for that many, yeah, bigger battles? And it's like, well, but anyways, let's, the tabletop, as far as like the resurgence, how's that been for you? How have you seen it? Is that just more of like, why do you think that's happening? Is it because of the artwork and the updates? Is it because of new materials going out? Is it just, hey, getting a new facelift, and uh, people are coming back who maybe have just sort of like wandered away? Like what do you think that is?
I think, like, yeah, I I try to not end up tooting my horn a lot, because art is definitely a thing, but BattleTech's a thing where everything has to come together for it to work, and that part of that long period of struggle for the franchise is kind of, nothing was coming together for a while. Tabletop, like our box set ran out, we couldn't reproduce it, and even our rule books went out of print, and all our supplements were out of print. Like, you couldn't find anything.
I didn't
And
know that.
so, as a new player, you couldn't, about the only thing you might have been able to get was the core rule book, for several years, and even that could be hard to come by. So that's why, getting our new intro boxes out was a huge thing. But we also were in a mad scramble just to get rule books and supplements out. So getting Total Warfare purchasable, making sure that you can find Alpha Strike if you want to play Alpha Strike. But then, okay, what TROs do people buy? Because so many of the TROs for a new player are 20-plus-year-old products, and it looks sketchy to them to buy such an old product. So we had to get TRO Succession Wars out, now TRO Clan Invasion out, and I guess now they just put out TRO Jihad. But okay, that's nice. Well, now what about all our optional rules? So we had to get all of our advanced rules and advanced construction books, like all of it had to be redone. So that's why you saw there's that retro line of book covers and for all of our rule books, which people are like, oh, why are you putting all that old retro art on it? Which, like, we just need to get stuff out because none of it's in print. So absolutely, I think a lot of it is we did need new art. And probably my favorite thing to hear, and I hear it quite a bit, is not just new players that were on the sidelines. They knew BattleTech existed, but they kept seeing the art, and that kind of put them off. Like, all those people are jumping in now. Now all of the video game players that wanted to transition over to tabletop, now they're willing to play because, like we said, it's very jarring going from these brand new, fresh designs to 30-year-old designs. And then there's just a lot of old BattleTech players that stopped playing because they see the new art. They can get nice minis. They're more affordable. Everything's available. Local gamer groups are coming back together. So my Portland BattleTech group's always been pretty healthy, but like, I think they're like 50 to 100% larger groups playing now. So we'll have like sometimes 8 guys show up to play one night. So I think it's a big team effort because obviously, as cool as the art is and as fun as it is to work on that, we need writers and layout people and people doing the non-mech artwork. Like, everything matters, and it had to come together. And it's not until these last few years that it's just like finally getting there, and it's just, yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, speaking of like the universe and everything coming together too, what about the novels? Like, did you read any of the novels? Were you
So
into that?
when I was younger, I knew about the novels existing, but it definitely did not exist in New Zealand. Even during peak MechWarrior Dark Age clicks times, like, even that was very hard to find and almost nobody playing it. But once I moved to the US, that was when all the Dark Age novels were happening. So I did buy those and read those. So that's pretty much all my novel reading experience, is probably the first third to half or so of those MechWarrior Dark Age novels that came out.
Gosh, so you got like yeah, see, I've read like all of the up until the Dark Ages. I've read a few of those. Um Everything changed, right? I mean, like, the
Mm-hmm.
entire universe changed for us. All of our favorite characters were either dead or like 90, 100 years old, So
Yeah.
like, yeah, so yeah, it's tough because, right, you're a company you've created this universe, you're updating the aesthetic, right? You've got this huge store, all these novels, all these tiers, all this previous games and stuff like that, and you're trying to attract a new user base, or not even bring users back, which I think that's valid too, but like the idea is like, how do we get new blood in? And I don't think it's bad to saying you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, but like, yeah, artwork matters, and especially
Mm-hmm.
in today when all the artwork looks amazing. Like, I remember picking up my first novel in the bookstore when I was 12 because of the artwork. And it just so happened it was the Second Blood of Karinsky novel, and it had a Timberwolf jump jetting out of the ocean on the cliff. It was basically a ambush against Victor Steiner, and then Kyle Liao comes in and saves him. Anyways, yeah, I'm a big nerd. That's all I did. That's all I did. Like, but the artwork was something I'd never seen before. It's like, here's these robots. Oh, they're not robots. They're machines, and there's people piloting them. Like, holy crap. I feel like there's something really cool there, and I feel like it's the idea that, like, you have got these elite, not only just mech pilots, but then you've got aerospace and you've got tech. It's the perfect analogy is it's Game of Thrones in the future in space, right? And instead
Mm-hmm.
of armored horses, you've got mechs, right? I mean, that's I don't know what came first. I think BattleTech's been around longer than Game of Thrones. I don't know that for certain. I'm just saying
Yeah.
he stole some ideas. Um, yeah. Do you
Yeah, it's good.
do
Good
you
seeing the new novels starting to come around again for sure.
yeah, do you have any like favorite favorite mech? Are you even allowed to say that? Are you allowed to have
I
one
think I
favorite?
get asked that all the time.
Let's get it over with. What's your favorite
I
mech?
think like most people, it's hard to go wrong with a Timberwolf.
Oh.
But I'm definitely the type that has my favorites have been diluted out because my job is now to give every mech the favorite treatment, try to make it look as good as possible. So yeah, it's more looking back like, okay, which mechs am I proud of for pulling out of the trash?
Yeah. Gotcha. Well, speaking of mechs, dimensions, we were talking about scale recently. It was after a mod came out for Mech 5 and me and you were talking about it, and you shared that you guys have a pretty in-depth, like, I didn't think this is much of an important from a tabletop and especially minis, but you guys are taking it pretty freaking serious. Actually, I would say more serious than probably a game studio is doing that's creating it. But I mean, you're taking that to heart as far as like that a uh, heavy or an assault or a that the scale imbalance that we have in like Mech 5 up until Navid's rescale. Can you sort of go through the process? Like, why is that important to you, and why do you think it's important to the fans?
Yeah, I think like anybody that's looked at the old BattleTech miniatures, and even recently they've got better, but it can still be a problem, is just mechs that look way out of scale. Like I think one of the big ones is like, isn't the Adder light mech in the Direwolf 100 tons like 3 times the size, and they're visually about the same size, and it's a huge issue. And again, it's been curtailed a bit, but what we're finding just putting together the Game of Armored Combat set, just 9 mechs, we quickly saw, okay, if you're off by just 1 millimeter, you can see. And if we're rounding the size of our miniatures to 1 millimeter, you really ideally you only have one correct height and everything else is wrong. And the fact that many miniatures before just not even close to that 1 millimeter margin said we need to put together a system. So for the first 2 box sets, it was just eyeballing it. We put them all beside each other in 3D and just got them as close as we could. And that's tough because it's just 9 mechs. Um, a lot of them are the same tonnage, like the Catapult, Thunderbolt, similar tonnage. And we have the Griffin, Wolverine, Shadowhawk, same tonnage. So we weren't able to make a gradient of size. But going into this Kickstarter, some of the guys at the Iron Wind modeling crew had put in some preliminary efforts on how to scale things better. And then one of my modelers, Dale Ida, he's I think Hardware Studios is his group. Maybe not. I might have that wrong. Um, he went and made a Google document spreadsheet that does math. So it takes the tonnage of the mech, and we worked out a predicted volume. There's also a predicted height, but what we mostly go by is a volume. Um, and so now we run things have to look right while falling within a margin of error for volume, because that kind of pushes us in the right direction. Because MechWarrior Online and Mech 5 struggles with that same issue. Like, what do you do with a Grasshopper or a Black Knight, where they just get super tall if you go strictly by volume? And I don't know their exact methods, but essentially you can't just go by rules. You have to do a lot by feel, and you also have to have a big sample size. So this Kickstarter is going to bring us to over 100 mechs. So that's finally a good sample size. At this point, we have one mech in every weight class or more. So it's just over time, we're getting more and more accurate.
Yeah.
And now it's quite a breeze to get the scale right on a mech. But yeah, you have to put so much work into it. You can't just give it a quick look and lock it in. You're pretty much guaranteed to be wrong. So I sympathize with the struggles at PGI. They they'd essentially have to rescale their mechs quite often as they add more until they finally hit a good granular state for accuracy.
Yeah, I mean, I can see the issues at the very beginning when you had like 4 mechs, but then as you go along, yeah, if you don't have that nailed down, yeah. So obviously, you guys coming in with over 100 mechs. Can we talk about like we just talked about scale, but what about like proportions and artwork and stuff? Like one of the issues I've had in like even like Mech 4, like why is the Fafnir shooting? It's like it's shooting Volkswagen Beetles. You remember the Sarna article about that? It's like giant pancakes. Like these are like 200 millimeter rounds, not Volkswagen Beetles, guys. Like, can we talk about scale and your feelings on that? And as far as the new artwork.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely went into it personally with the fact that a lot of weapons look okay, even if they're not realistic. But some, like you say, the AC-20s, heavy Gauss rifles, like they just have ridiculously huge diameters going on. And while some of it can be explained away, it's just is ridiculous. So I went in with my heels dug in that I was going to not have the giant AC-20 barrels to the point where you just cannot fit the ammunition into the mech. Of course, we can't solve the ammunition volume issue, but we can alleviate it a lot, be less ridiculous. So, yeah, we got AC-20s, less diameter, trying to get all of our lasers a lot more conformed, and also conforming like what length of barrel something should have. So like an AC-20 should have a pretty big diameter, but it doesn't necessarily need to have a really long barrel, because we know it's a really short range weapon. Whereas once we get into that like AC-10, AC-5 range, like we want long barrels. And something I had to push for is like shrinking down the size of Gauss rifle barrels, because those things at the velocity they're shooting at, you don't need a big slug. And if we go by today's weapons, like a long penetrator is better than a big fat slug getting in, pushed back by the air. So there's at least one case where it's like, hey, is that Gauss rifle barrel a little small? And I did some quick, rough scale math and then even rounded it down in the favor of that critique and said, hey, like it's the Gauss rifle on the Eben Jaguar, or and I said, just so you know, it's the size of a battleship cannon. Like, it's huge. That is an enormous Gauss slug that'll destroy anything. That'll take a dropship down with one shot. So it's, and of course, logic can kill the fun. So I don't push too hard on that, but it's a good defense sometimes to tone down the ridiculousness.
So that's also sort of the magic of it, right? Like you're talking about a sci-fi universe set in the future with materials that we don't have currently, and I mean, from the max and muscle and power sources and all of that, right? We don't have any of that, but I feel like scale, and when you talk about volume, right, you always get in this argument with a bunch of like BattleTech nerds. It's like, well, density, the mechs would actually float because they have so much volume. But anyways, you know what I'm saying. Me and you've talked about it a lot, and it's one of those where you have to at least a little bit push reality out, but also we have real world things, and this is a discussion topic, and that I brought to you. One of the issues I have with all, and this is all, Mechwarrior games where you're in a mech and you're piloting, I feel like one of the biggest issues, and in this case, let's use MechWarrior Online and Mech 5, for example. The issues I have is that gameplay wasn't established and then the mechs were designed around them, right? It's the mechs were designed in aesthetics and then the gameplay was designed, right? And I feel like the problem with that is like, you know, like in MWO or Mech 5, then you're dealing with a low slung hard point. It's like, well, one, you'd never design anything like that, right? But and that's also sort of a drawback too, to some extent, of you want the Atlas to look like the Atlas, but like, how do you conform it in a way where it still holds true, but then doesn't have these built-in negatives? Whereas the one freedom I would say that you guys have is that you can still conform to the original sort of reference material, upgrading it, but it's a tabletop. So it doesn't matter as much. There's no rules in the tabletop saying, well, you've got a low slung on your waist AC20 versus it's up on your shoulder, right? I mean, I know, you've talked about this one in length as well. So yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely, video games have just all that interactive depth makes a lot of cool things just not work anymore. And like, yeah, high slung weapon mechs, they do look cool, but it gets boring when everything has to be the same all the time. So definitely,
that's why MechCommander works, right? Or like,
yeah,
right? Like,
yeah, I really appreciate the freedom we get as a tabletop game of like, so much more can just be rule of cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, aesthetics. I mean, again, I think this entire podcast is pretty much just we just need Mech Commander. I think we should just wrap it up. No. But yeah, let you drink there. Got that hard H2O. I see. He can't see me, by the way, guys. For those that are wondering, he can't see me. I've got him on video, but I'm broadcasting directly to OBS. So he's just staring at like nothing.
Staring at myself, actually.
Right? It's all right. I can see you. That's all that matters, and they can see you. All right, so let's talk about the Kickstarter. What has that experience been like? Because holy shit, 24 hours, man! It was a huge success.
Oh yeah, yeah. I believe we funded in 7 hours or something.
But with like, fast. Oh yeah, you funded within like 7 hours, but like, it was ridiculous. And it caught me by surprise. Not that you succeeded, but that you guys kept adding shit. Like, I was like, when is it going to stop? Like, he was like, are they still going to make money? Like, that's where I was concerned about. It was like, hey, you know, this is cool, but like, and powers that be, I guess they were right. But I was like, sheesh, man. It was cool. It was crazy. It was cool.
Would probably have been quite a bit more conservative on those goals if I was in control. Of course, I'm here as an artist with my art team, and we're just staring at it like, oh no, that's a lot of work. But at the end of the day, you know, it's what people want. It's what the company wants. We'll hunker down and get the job done. Just feel like, guys, next time, let's make it a little easier.
More.
I think they might agree now, but
we need dropships with interiors and all that stuff more.
Oh, we've talked about that interior, for sure. But no, it's a lot of work. But you know, I just laid it out with management, like, hey, we're gonna work here. We don't know how long this is gonna take, but we'll just go at it till it's done, and try to keep people happy along the way. You know, the fan base has been very patient so far. I feel like the only like disgruntled people I see is simply there's so many backers for such a small company to manage that just like customer support is really hard for Catalyst to keep up with. So that's why you get all those people like, hey, I'm not getting replied to with my emails. And yeah, that's definitely something we need to work on. But like, think of like, I don't even know if Catalyst has a customer support employee per se. So I think everyone's been pretty gracious and understanding. Like, I don't see nobody's been mad about the delays that are happening, you know, aside from your default conspiracy theorists that, you know, they think it's a scam from the very start. And those,
Sure. You just gotta ignore those people.
I live
Yeah.
for that stuff, though. I love
Oh, yeah.
salt.
Yeah. No.
Just the wacky conspiracy theory
Yeah.
stories. Keep up on them. But
And for those
no,
that
we
may not
just
know, you guys do have delays. They have been keeping us up to date on the Kickstarter, obviously with
mhm.
the COVID and the whole entire
Yeah.
world. And
Uh,
hold on, we're breaking up there. Can you hear me?
yeah, I can hear you.
All right, go ahead.
Yeah, it's sorry, I lost my train of thought as well.
COVID delays, stuff like that.
Mhm.
We've got all that going on. So you guys been pretty awesome about keeping us up to date on that. But yeah, I mean, the Kickstarter was hugely successful, and I know we were like trying to, I mean, just it was like we'd send out a tweet, you guys would send out an email like, oh, we just hit this goal, and then it was like, all right, what's it? And by the end, the last goal, it's like, are we gonna get there? Are we gonna get there? And of course, yeah, we definitely got there. And I definitely had to select Clan Wolf for all of my stuff. I did the $50, like, dude, there were people, I'm just saying, like, there's some passionate people out there. Let's just put it that way.
Mhm.
Yes, passionate
Yeah,
people.
the amount of money going in is crazy. And then if you know where to look, you can actually see the CrowdOx funding as well. The
What is that?
amount of so CrowdOx is our pledge manager for picking all your orders and stuff after the Kickstarter. And because you're allowed to come in as a late backer, we gained even more late backers, people expanding their pledges. Because I think a big thing I raised was, okay, cool, we're doing all this stuff, but nobody can afford this. It's so much stuff. Um, but given that people had several months to get their orders in, the amount of people that expanded their pledges. So you look at that, whatever the final number was on the Kickstarter page, it's much bigger than that now. So really cool to see how big it is. Of course, there's the part where like, yeah, it's much bigger than the Robotech Tactics
Yeah,
Kickstarter.
2,586,421, and that's just what's on there. I don't know if that also increased,
Yeah,
but
no, that's just what people could scrounge up in 30 days.
okay. And then
There's more than that added after.
11,277 backers, and then the stretch goal here was let me scroll down because it's a lot
It's
here.
a long scroll.
Oh my
yeah.
gosh, we're not even it. Nope, one. I think it was 2. Was it 2 million? I think that's what. Hold on, let me. I think at 2 million. No guts, no galaxy. I'm not saying there's any connection, but uh, yeah, no, 2.5. And that was the legendary Mechwarrior packs. Kel, Carlisle, Karinsky, and Pride. Wow. Like I didn't even. And then you could add. Yeah, I mean, for me, it's one of those where again, being a kid and a teenager, growing up with this being like a huge part of your life, and it sounds so funny, but I mean it's true. Where people had like, I don't know, they grew up with skateboarding and this and that. I grew up with reading BattleTech, playing Mechwarrior and Mech Commander, and like, and so to see that come to back to life is just, again, it's pretty freaking cool. And yeah, dude, you're a part of history, man.
Thank you. It's funny, just brought to mind when you're talking about childhood and stuff, and the whole like being called out memes these days. One day my mom asked me, is all you think about mechs? And I was like, wow, she got me. I do just think about mechs. So it's funny, but very eye-opening. I'm like, man, I really do like BattleTech
Yeah.
as a kid.
Yeah, mech porn, dude. I remember the first
Mhm.
time I started using that term, and now it's like it's just common knowledge now. My wife was like, "What did you just say?" And I'm like, "Mech porn." It's like, oh my
Yep.
gosh, like you. I'm like, what? Man likes what a man likes, What can he saying? Why are you judging? All right. So obviously the Kickstarter. What was that? obviously you had already put in effort to, you know, the images of like the box set and stuff that was already there. Executioner, Puma, all those, like you'd already done a lot. But was it one of those where it was like, oh, this is happening, so, you know, like here's initial sketches, like what was the time frame of like turning around? Because like I feel like it was like we had these designs, but or were they already hashed out and you guys are pretty confident in the end result?
We definitely had, let's say, 2/3 of wave one ready to go going into the Kickstarter. Maybe less than that. Could have been half. Because we went in, like, we'd just gotten an 8 mech box and a 2 mech box out. So I'm like, all right, let's go for, like, let's get 12 more mechs added to the roster. And then from above, they're like, okay, 12, but let's also be ready to add another 12. I'm like, oh, 24, it's kind of ridiculous. But I guess we could do that. And then, like I said, it turned into 100. I believe the Kickstarter count is 99 miniatures. Um, so once it started going off the rails there, and management wanted to just roll with it, because I think it's a perfectly valid choice to just tell your backers, like, okay, this has been a good run. It's just going to be, you know, profit from here on out. But they wanted to keep adding more stuff. So it's not so much, you know, you don't want to burn your artists out. So I didn't really ask my artists to work faster, but I did definitely immediately go into recruiting more people and making sure that our pipeline was as efficient as possible. Because that's, like, aside from putting my personal design work into BattleTech, a really big thing I've done for Catalyst is just redesign the way that they push a mech through production. So instead of, like you said, the line art is king, is how it used to be. And the line art is still king, but it used to be that's what came first. So you say to an artist, okay, we want this mech, deliver line art. And there would be the potential for concept sketches before that line art happens. But for the most part, it was just a race to get the line art done. Whereas now it's, let's have a very compartmentalized, deliberate phase where we just sketch. And so let's sketch a mech and make it look good there before we have the artist distracted with clean lines or anything like that. And then knowing that we're going to do 3D models of these anyway, and we talked about animation methods where it's more effective to do 3D than make it look like 2D. It's more effective for us to go from the sketch straight to our 3D model for the miniature. And then in 3D, we just put a line art shader on it and pump it out. And a line artist still needs to do a lot of handwork on it. And I actually prefer that because that's what makes it look traditional instead of just like a 3D render. But they don't have to worry about perspective, about messing up their proportions. They can even have 3D like prep their cell shading for them, which I think cuts the line art production time in half, if not more. So that was me flipping things all around, and now we've got just way better assets and reference and accuracy. So whenever we go to, like, somebody has to do a book cover, you know, color illustration, they're not going by line art and trying to match the accuracy of that. We can send them the mech in 3D in whatever pose they want, and they can just paint over it. And so that's what Marco Mazzoni and Alex Iglesias have been doing. I guess Spooky as well.
Mm-hmm.
A few other guys. They can just use our 3D models and go from there instead of having to sweat about if they screwed up the mech or not.
Yeah. And it's funny enough, yeah, like Spooky was probably one of the first outside of you that I saw doing obviously fan art, but you could tell he was basically taking the models from MWO, you know, staging them in a pose and then doing his paint over, which I thought always looked pretty damn awesome. So did you do all of the like designs, or is it you and like two other people? Like, Like what we saw for sketches of like the Timby and stuff like that. Are you doing that, or are you just the one who basically says, okay, out of these, yes, we'll do this one. I like the direction, go with that.
Yeah, it's a mishmash. I do probably 80% of the designs, but is I can pump those out pretty efficiently when that's all I have to do. But I need to run a team, so I want variety in the art a little bit. I'm pushing an aesthetic that we have to follow, but I know that I could very easily fall into the same trap that MechWarrior Online has, and like no fault to Alex Iglesias. I think just when you're stuck in a mode for years, um, you kind of drive towards an end game. I call it the final destination. If you're always pushing for in a certain direction of quality, you're just kind of boxing yourself in. So I want other artists to be designing alongside me, not only to get their variety in, but also to train them up in this new style. And because there's no better time than when we need to do 100 designs than to get other people learning how to do it. Um, so I've got guys like Bishop Steiner. He's really popular with the MechWarrior crowd.
Urbies,
Uh, yep, yep. I
lamb, Urbies, Jesus. What are we
knew
getting
when the
to?
Irby was on that Kickstarter. It's like that's Bishop's. He gets that. No questions. Nobody can argue me on that. Bishop gets to do the Irby, and he did a great job on it. I think you can argue, but I think best or one of the best Irbies we've had.
I mean, if there's such a
Um,
thing, yeah, maybe, you know.
Yep, we've got Harry Kaleo. He did a bunch of designs for Wave One and especially early Wave Two stuff. And Alan Blackwell,
Yes.
he's done a few designs. Um, Even Dale's done a few. He usually does models. Essentially, if I have a 3D modeler and they've got some design skills and they want to cut their teeth on this a bit, I think it's give them a chance. Um, yeah, so I want some variety in there, but ultimately it just ends up with me doing most of them because I can do them quickly, and we don't have to do the whole critique phase between me and the other artist because it's just me.
Yeah. So
um,
obviously we were only talking about mechs here. Um, is there any plans on taking this revitalize of, the artwork to what mech warriors look like, what tanks look like, APCs, stuff like that? Is that
mhm.
something that, if you want, say you're like, I don't know, you want more of like a tank division, are those assets going to be getting an update as well?
I think that's probably inevitable. The something I want to do. I think on tabletop, 90% of the time or more, it's just mech combat, and we got to be fair to that. But what percentage of that is people that don't play combined arms again because the miniatures don't look good? I do think innately BattleTech is more fun playing with just the focus is on the mechs, and that's fair. But I would like to see a pack of tanks, a pack of battle armor. I don't know about air assets because that's a true rarity. I've
Yeah,
never once
aerospace.
seen
Yeah.
it's the rules are complicated.
Yeah.
It slows things down, especially because both players need to understand what's happening. You generally want to avoid, you know, just trusting that your opponent is playing their units correctly without knowing how it works. So yeah, people will often ask like, why aren't we pushing aerospace more? Aerospace is cool. Yeah, it's cool, but it's not great
Niche.
for the game, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Well, then
Just like people want lambs
yeah.
and nah.
Well, realistically too, from a business standpoint, if it doesn't sell well, like you could be like, well, okay, can we do something about that? And then put feelers out there, but there's no guarantee. I mean, like if Aerotech, even like the Aerotech, like the big battles and stuff like that. I mean, yeah, they've done it in the past, but that doesn't mean it was successful, or it doesn't mean it'd be
Mhm.
successful now too. So
Yeah, I think definitely a big focus on mechs, but I would like to see kind of a tank pack that has, all the really popular tanks that can help you fill out your combined arms, battle armor along the way. I mean, we did the elementals in this Kickstarter. Might be
which
a
look
good
great.
idea for us to just throw one in every once in a while. I think a dropship pack would be cool for map pieces, objective markers.
Yeah.
Because dropships, those, are a really big part of BattleTech. It's how you get your armies around. They're always there. They're involved in every battle. So I think a lot of people would love to put little dropship markers on their maps. That's just, there are definitely options from Ironwind, but they're limited, and some of them are quite old as well.
Yeah. Well, and I think that gets into as well, if you're playing the tabletop, if you do add vehicles and you do add infantry, like are they what do they add to the experience? And I feel like not do they have are they cool? Do they look cool? And I think there's validity for that too. But just, well, the mechs can do everything. Well, why do I care about the tanks? What about the gameplay? Do they add any functionality? Do they add any dynamic point to that? And I feel like then that could be argued. Yeah, then, it's sort of like, I guess, in other games too, when you've got like, your main characters, but hey, this is a unique class and this guy can heal and stuff like that. I think if you have to almost be creative with vehicles in that sense of like, like, hey, if you have this around, then maybe, I don't know, again, it has a unique attribute that it adds to the experience. And so then you can definitely incorporate those things in, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, man, I've wondered this, and I think I may have asked you as well, like, we have Mega Mech out there, and Mega Mech, a lot of people enjoy it. I've always just been surprised that we haven't, and I think maybe that's what Tactics was made. They were trying to do two things. They were trying to make a turn-based, basically the tabletop, how it is, in a Lance configuration, but then they were doing this weird card collection thing. And again, I feel like they didn't know their audience at all. I think that's what you were sort of hinting at, is like, they didn't know who they were. It's like, guys, kids aren't playing your game. It's 30, 40-year-olds.
There's a lot of some franchises you can kind of just jump developers into, and I think others, the fan base is, and let's just be honest, the fan base is pickier and harder to work with, and you really have to go in with, completely ready to take it on, and BattleTech is definitely one of those settings. And yeah, I think just those developers, visually they didn't know what they're getting into, and maybe with the cards there's that aspect of developers going in, and again, if this is like a IGP sanctioned thing, did they go in with the card method, like, okay, first, how do we monetize this game?
Yeah.
I think if you go into a game and your first idea is how do we like make
money,
the most money out of it,
you're
shooting yourself in the foot.
Yeah. Speaking of card game, man, like I'll tell you, as a fan, that's one thing I wish there was an online. I'm not like, because that would be digital, that would be a game, that would be something
not a bad idea.
I mean, I obviously understand they couldn't just basically use the rules that the original. Actually, my cards are right over there on a bench, but like, they would have to come up with some new. I don't know how popular it would be, but just from a sort of like Gwent, I don't know. Do they add it in a Mechwarrior game? Do we add it to Mech 5 and it's just this fun little side thing and it turns in? I don't know, but I just feel like mobile, especially with how mobile games are and stuff like that. Have you guys thought about doing like mobile apps of some sort?
I don't know if they've thought about that, and I don't know if that is something Catalyst doesn't even think about because it's digital. That could be all Microsoft realm.
Yeah, it would be.
But it's certainly, like card games are popular. We got Hearthstone and many others. It's a way to take a proven type of game, but then take out, like, a lot of games translate well to digital because the player doesn't have to do the math in their head anymore. Yeah. So, this, like, Hearthstone got a lot of players that wouldn't play Magic to play a card game because it's more visual and flashy. And the development costs aren't crazy because you got to do a lot of illustrations, but it doesn't go too much further than that.
You have
You
to have
don't have
good
to.
designers,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
And between it's either Piranha's models or our models, like we're getting this big library of assets where whoever does it, yeah, they will have a lot easier of a time doing all those mech illustrations should they choose to do it. So, like, yeah, I think a digital mech card, BattleTech card game would be pretty sweet. I
Yeah, that would.
just, yeah, I don't know if that would be a Catalyst thing. Certainly, we
Yeah.
could do a physical card game, but so niche, it's a pretty big gamble.
Yeah. And that's the problem I have when playing games is I'm such a BattleTech nerd. I'm just like, I'm playing Darkest Dungeon. I'm like, dude, this would be a great BattleTech game. Like, think about it. Like, the idea that you got 4 mechs and that you got different abilities and one's a shield, you got a Centurion with a shield up front, like all those type of things. Obviously, you get into weird stuff because you don't have like heals or whatever. But the idea that you've got this like dungeon crawler, right? I just, that's, like, I don't know, man. I always picture of just all these different genres, and like BattleTech could totally fill them. Like it's an
Mhm.
amazing universe that has so much depth. And um do you think, as far as aesthetics go, I mean, obviously we're none of the artwork is I guess super realistic, as far as like you're not trying to capture like like textures and stuff and reality and stuff like that. But like, if you could picture, what would that look like to you? Like in a movie sense, like what would you go for? Like if you were
Yeah,
to
it's always
envision.
a fun idea. I feel like the MechWarrior 4 trailers, MechWarrior 4 Vengeance was such an awesome intro. Like it definitely shows the you can do it realism. Um, Definitely helps that our all our new redesigned mechs on both sides of the field are much more, they would work a lot better in a physical state. Um, but on the flip side, constantly seeing the discussion, why doesn't BattleTech have a movie? Why doesn't
Oh yeah.
BattleTech have a live action Game of Thrones? I'm like, nobody's gonna make that.
Yeah.
Um,
So there's a
I could foresee the like lower investment, like um, there's a lot of 3D anime coming out uh, these days, and even just Clone Wars type stuff. Like
yeah.
BattleTech could do that, but I like to just not think about live action
Yeah.
BattleTech because I think it's so far fetched of a business decision that
Yeah. It has to
nobody
be.
would be making that.
Yeah, it has to be a fan project of just like, and there's, funny enough, there's someone on Twitter. I'm not going to name any names, but we've been retweeting a few of their things. I don't know all the details yet, but from my understanding is they're using like MWO Mech 5 assets to create a MWO Mech 5 inspired animation, which I think would be really cool. So they're not trying to be like an animated series or whatever. It's just like a fandom stuff.
Hmm.
Um, and I've always sort of felt like that's where the realm is, right? I mean, we've got like the all systems nominal cartoons
Hmm.
um, that are fantastic, which every single time I play them and watch them, I have them on my Be Right Back screen. So it's like all of them combined. And
Yeah.
it's so funny because except for like the first like 2, which have to do with the cicada, the rest are what is going on in MWO and the history there. And so like, you'll see the Arctic cheetah get caught up in the tree and it can't move. It's because that's how it used to be. Or like, the bunny hopping timberwolf, because that's what used to happen, right? Or, I mean, all these type of things. The Highlander goes to jump jet and just barely hovers, right? Like, I feel
Yeah.
like fans, there's a lot of cool tools, but one of the things, is like, yeah, that all sounds good. It's just so much work. It's
Hmm.
like, but the cool thing is, speaking of like, there are platforms out there, I think, for helping teams and artists potentially achieve those goals. Maybe not directly as far as like, hey, make us, BattleTech cartoons or whatever, but like, hey, what if those guys are creating fan art and then you're supporting them in their endeavors, not necessarily what they pump out? And
Hmm.
it could just so happen to be like Battletech stuff too. And again, I'm not a lawyer. I'm just saying like there are
Yep.
stuff like Patreon, and that's probably the number one out there
Yep.
that knows. But
I
like,
mean, biased, but Patreon is amazing.
right?
I
Yeah.
think more artists need to move towards Patreon. It's really different. Um, but I think a lot of artists are afraid to move for it. Either they think it's a lack of dignity, begging for money. But as a YouTuber and anyone that watches YouTube, you eventually figure out like there's nothing wrong with trying to get yours and asking for it.
Yep.
'Cause a lot of people are willing to pitch in, but yeah, a lot of things that weren't possible for creatives to do before you can now do because everybody wants it. It's just where does the money come from? And now you got this platform where everybody can give a couple bucks and you get the stuff you want to see. Um,
Yeah. I think money is just one of those weird things people are uncomfortable talking about. I mean,
mhm.
I don't know why it should be. I heard a quote recently. It said, if you don't want to be concerned about money, you should be good at money. And that makes total sense, right? If you like, but the idea that, in YouTube, man, like, you have to have so many views. Like, if you were to just, like, to just make a living off of YouTube, and like that's what pays your bills. Like the reality of it is you need in the millions per month views, right?
Yep.
Like millions. Like let's just say like average salary in America, I don't know what that is, but like you would need millions of views. And so the reality of it is like if you create content on YouTube, but your niche, I mean, all you're doing is you're basically saying, hey, if you want to support me, you like what I'm doing here, hey, go check out my Patreon. I don't think there's anything crazy. And I'm jealous because you have something that I don't. You have drawing skills and I don't have shit. So, like, that's one thing that you guys have an advantage over that, like, you can offer, like, hey, if you do this pledge level, I'll draw this, or like, hey, you get access to, sketches, or you get access to, I mean, you name it, you can pretty much do it. Whereas like a content creator, like that's something like I struggle with, which is, like, well, what can I do? Well, then I have to be creative. I have to be realistic, and, you've got a patron and you still take commissions, and we'll have that link down below, by the way. Do you have any details that you want to share about that as far as like what people can expect there, so forth and so on?
Yeah, it used to be my Patreon was my Protectorate Wars stuff, um, which yeah, it definitely that helped me continue on my production of stuff there. Of course, I want to get back to that someday, but nowadays it's BattleTech all day, every day. Um, and so currently, if you go to my Patreon page, what you can expect is to see all the stuff that the Kickstarter page posts for updates, but sooner. And it's not so much that Catalyst is holding things back to have this exclusive paywall zone. It's just that if I finish something and it's approved, like it's really easy for me to put it on Patreon. Whereas on Kickstarter, they've got to send it to whoever is managing their posts there, and they want to collect them into nice little batches. And um, so basically, if you want to see the bleeding edge of what is happening with BattleTech mech art, my Patreon is the place to see it. So you'll see all of our design sketches whenever they're ready, and you'll see our 3D models when they're ready. Often you'll see like turnaround renders that you might not see on the Kickstarter. Sometimes I'll post like special development stuff that, again, you won't see elsewhere. And I always try to like describe the thought processes on the designs we went through so you can get, digging a little deeper on that information. But I always like to stress that, and how I think most people should run their Patrons is don't go there looking for exclusive content. It's if you like my work or the work that my team is doing and you want to support that, then go there and subscribe. Currently, you just pledge $2 and you can see everything. Yeah, it's about supporting the artist rather than finding a bunch of exclusive stuff. But nonetheless, you will find exclusive stuff or kind of timed exclusives.
Gotcha. And now, have you ever thought about doing like a time lapse where you're like, hey, I'm tackling this mech, and you're in Photoshop and you're doing your whole thing,
Mhm.
and you can see it from start to finish. Have you ever done that?
So when I did the initial flip around Kickstarter time of switching it to BattleTech content, I did do some time lapses of line art that I've done. And not so much like recorded video sped up. It's like a few iterated saves of the image, and then it's a GIF that flips through. I have started saving up progress iterations of some of my new sketch designs, so I need to compile those into GIFs. And yeah, so you'll get a similar thing to see time lapses of how I sweep through mech design. I don't think it's as exciting to show, but definitely I know people enjoy that. So yes, you should expect to see some time lapses. We have 3D turntable animations for some of our mechs coming out now.
Yep, I saw
Uh,
those.
so yeah, that's the cool little extras. But part of it is every little extra thing like that. It does take a bit of time to put together, and sometimes the question is, should I be doing that or should I be designing another mech for the
Yeah,
Kickstarter?
it's a balance, right? Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. If someone like you mentioned Bishop, I remember early on Bishop doing line art and seeing it in MWO Merck's website and stuff like that. It if Do you have any advice for someone that maybe is interested in whether it's for BattleTech or just in general? I mean, is it just one of those like just keep practicing, just like every other, like
Yeah, that's the thing is there's a lot of time, not much magic to it. It really is. The more you draw, the better you'll get. Um, a lot of people ask, I think a good specific one is, all right, you want to get good at mechs. Like, how do you learn to draw mechs? Because you want to draw people, you just draw people, and landscapes, you draw landscapes. But and there's plenty of tropes around sci-fi, but how do you get into designing mechs without just copying some other franchise? And honestly, I think to start, you kind of do just have to copy for a while. Um, and you build kind of visual library up in your brain of what shape languages work good, which ones do you personally like, is where you'll eventually head, and that's how you develop your own mech style as an artist. Is you riff off your favorite mecha, and eventually that all amalgamates into your own little thing. So yeah, similar, the way I'm pushing BattleTech now is me taking all the official art, the video game art, the fan art that's come before me, and just like mashing all my favorite parts together, and that's what you see now.
gotcha. Okay. Well, pretty straightforward. Just keep practicing and
Oh yeah, lots of
yeah.
practice, and get yourself out there. A lot of people are embarrassed by their artwork, or they are embarrassed by the idea of shilling for themselves. Like even when they're not asking for money, they don't want to ask for followers. They're afraid that they're posting too much, being afraid of posting your loose sketches. The truth is, people want to see all of it. Like
Yeah.
even your terrible art, people probably want to see it. Um, get it out there because for especially for illustrators these days, it's going freelance. It's all online. It's digital. Definitely, if you're a new artist and you're not working digitally yet, uh, as lame as it might sound, you got to go digital. Get a Wacom tablet and just get at it. But getting work requires being seen, and it's all a statistics game. So the more you're out there, the more likely you are that that one client that wants exactly what you do, they're not going to employ you if they don't know you exist. So get posting, even if you don't think you're good enough yet. Like it's a grind. You got to grind your way up that
Yeah.
that totem pole.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, Yeah. I mean, especially the digital. I mean, everything's digital. I mean, I can understand like you wanting to learn, right? And so you can do it not, like on pen and paper and all. I
Hmm.
get that, right? And same thing with like I'm sure in the grand scheme of things, you know, you're gonna, even in your case, I mean, even if you're like, for instance, even that asteroid, Moonscape, sorry, I keep looking over to my right. You can't
Hmm.
see me. But like the Moonscape thing, it's a Moonscape. So like, how do you come up with terrain and features and stuff like that? You will have to learn those other aspects. But yeah, I mean, I think when I was a kid, I basically traced a lot of like BattleTech stuff. That's what I did,
Hmm.
right? And yeah, so I can see where you're going. But all right, man. Well, hey, we've been going nonstop. I mean, like I said, I feel like I just wanted to, you know, I've known you for years. I love your artwork. You guys have been doing a fantastic job on the Kickstarter, the artwork, the updates that are coming out. It's exciting to see where BattleTech, not only the tabletop, but like just where the universe is going, and obviously new novels and TROs and rule books and stuff like that. So I just wanted you on here because, like I said, I feel like you're a big part of the community. And on one sense, you got flying debris got sucked up by PGI. You were out there, and then you got sucked up by Catalyst, and but the cool thing is you're still able to do some of your own stuff as well. Spooky's out there. I know he's got his own DeviantArt as well. I'm not familiar with you mentioned two other names. I'm not as familiar. I do know Bishop as well.
Hmm.
So it's pretty cool seeing those artists get recognition, get used for official work as well. So yeah, thank you, man. You guys
Yep.
keep kicking ass, and it's good to see again the new artwork. Some of them I'm like that Marauder 2C, man. The I don't know, man. It's
The
different. It's different.
I really like that one,
Yeah, it's different.
but it's straight VMI. Um, some of those have been really fun.
Yeah,
Just the more obscure ones, either that were never Western official or
sure.
that were very quickly swatted down in lawsuits. So yeah, that Marauder 2C, um, I liked the VMI one, and I just wanted it straight translated.
Yeah.
Another one is the Stalker. You've seen that Stalker?
Yep. Yep.
So that one, its whole nose is the Japanese BattleTech Stalker.
Yeah.
Like not the VMI stuff, like the wacky, full-on Japanese anime looking BattleTech. Some of those, like, yeah, they don't fit in, but they look really cool. And that Stalker nose, I wanted it, so it's now our Western official nose.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I've been enjoying it. I think some of our biggest like tweets and then on Facebook have been when I've been like I remember I did that. I was like, really the only mech that really matters, and I did the Timberwolf one, and that was a big post. I mean, like so many people. But it's so funny because like I'll post something and be like, hold on, what is this? And I'm like, it's the Kickstarter. They're like, I had no idea. And there's the $1 million question. How do you get someone that is in touch or has been in touch with the BattleTech universe, but for whatever real life job, whatever, they're no longer there. And I think a big part, like you're correct, I think a big part of it was the 10 years of just nothing. And I think that obviously played a huge role in a lot of people going away. I know it did for me. The only reason like I guess I was fortunate where I discovered MechWarrior Living Legends back then, and then I got
Hmm.
involved with that, and that sort of helped me. Well, one, break away from my addiction to Eve, and yeah. So man, but you know what? Yeah, if you could picture, if you could snap your fingers, what would be a game, a battle? What would a perfect BattleTech game be to you? And BattleTech all encompassing. Would that be a
I
Mech
would
Commander?
really like to see. Now, this could be single player, but the ultimate version would be an MMO. But you take the concept of a 4X game you could say kind of like Eve, and just everybody's playing everything. So you've got people got to fly around the jump ships, and then you got to fly down your drop ship, and it's just a massive MMO. I think a BattleTech MMO would be cool. At the same time, we now know even a regular FPS, you have to have population to make those work. So my golden BattleTech game would fall flat on its face unless you had a massive player base or an enormous amount of AI inserted in. But I would really like to see a giant combined arms. Like at the end of the day, you're playing Mechwarrior down on the ground. But combined arms in the air, in space, logistics, it'll be sweet. It's never going to happen.
We can dream. You never know.
We'll dream for sure. That's how we get places.
All right. Well, man, it's been a pleasure. Thank you again for being on the podcast. I'll have your Twitter and your Patreon information down below for people that would like to follow you and or check out your Patreon as well. And like I said, I'd highly recommend it, guys. Keep up the good work, and I'm sure we'll talk very soon. Thank you again.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Phil.
And I'm glad you took off the cat ears. I think that worked out.
Yes.
Those aren't his headphones, by the way. Those are his girlfriend's. Or
I'm using these for the mic. Yeah. Friend. Yeah.
Friend. Yeah. Whatever you want to. Yeah. Sure, bro. Sure. Yeah. She won't watch this, I'm sure.
Maybe she will.
Yeah.
She'll be mad that the cat ears aren't here.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad they weren't. So, all right, man. I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. All right, guys. That is another episode down with Anthony Scroggins, aka Shimmering Sword. He's a fantastic guy. Love his artwork, and of course, you can see all of that on the Kickstarter. Obviously, there's other artists as well, and just want to say thank you again for being on it. It's great to talk, and so much in that we have familiar, as far as growing up and stuff like that. But yeah. So there is that. We do have another podcast coming up, and I will let you guys know as soon as that goes live. But if you enjoyed this podcast, make sure to click that like and subscribe button. Check out that bell notification for YouTube as well. I'll have all the links down below, but if you guys would like to catch me live, I stream every single Monday through Friday on Twitch. twitch.tv/NGNGTV. I as well have a Patreon, so if you'd like to support me directly and support my Hobbit ways, and of course my journey and my passion here, because really that's what it is. You guys support my passion in creating this content, whether it's interviews with artists or developers. Just want to say thank you. So consider that. And of course, if you want to check out our merchandise store, again, have a link down below. We have international shipping as well, and we have an affiliate link for Amazon. So if you're going to buy anything, maybe upgrade your PC, we've got Mother's Day coming up, anything, maybe your kid's birthday. If you just click through that link, we get kickbacks when you guys buy stuff. So just want to say thank you again, guys. Have a great day. I'll see you on the next episode. Until next time.